Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a writer and performer. Her work has been produced and or developed at New World Stages, Manhattan Theater Club, and Playwrights Horizons, amongst others. She received the Well Life Network Award and a county commendation for her Off-Broadway play Trial. She holds a BFA from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts and has trained at the Royal Shakespeare Company and the National Theater. The West Coast premiere of her play, The Opposite of Love, opens July 25th through August 31st at the Hudson Backstage Theater in Los Angeles. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ashley Griffin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So much better than the last time. Thanks for coming in. So you've got a new play opening up.
I do.
Now, is this your second play, or is this after Trial, or have you written other things in between?
Oh my goodness, I'm very prolific as a writer. So honestly, I have dozens and dozens of pieces that I've written of musicals, plays, film, TV, and I had my first play professionally produced when I was 17.
Oh, nice.
And congrats. I think on average had a new play produced once a year since then or so.
Oh, good for you. All right, great.
So I've got a few under my belt.
Okay, and so what came first, performing or writing?
Both, actually. So my one rule growing up is I wasn't allowed to put on a show in the living room before 7 o'clock in the morning. And whenever any babysitters would come over, it would be like, great, we're going to do Cinderella. Let's start. I'm going to stop you there. You need to say this. Let's do it again.
Oh, my goodness.
So the best way I can kind of sum it up is when I was little, my wonderful, wonderful mom got me a DVD of the old Ed Sullivan show performances from Broadway, the Broadway performances on Ed Sullivan. And I saw Anthony Newley do Who Can I Turn To? And was just really blown away and was really captivated by it. And being the little Hermione Granger that I am, went to the library to research, and I found out that he was the first person nominated for Best Book of a Musical, Best Score, and Best Actor for the same show in the same year. And so then my goal became I want to be the first female Anthony Newley. So I started performing at a very young age. I wrote my first musical for my third grade class when I was 8, and was convinced that I would never be able to be a professional writer because I lost 3 good years of training that I would never get back. And it was just too much to make up for. And so I was performing professionally from a young age, and then I had my first play produced when I was 17, so they've kind of developed alongside of each other.
What play was that when you were 17?
It was called Subtext.
All right. And how did that come about?
That came about from a lot of series of circumstances. So like I said, I'd been writing since I was 8, and I was performing all over the place. I went to the wonderful Hamilton Academy of Music for high school. It's a performing arts high school. Got to do a specialized independent study in a playwriting course there because that wasn't one of the things that they offered. And I grew up at a really wonderful rep company, the Santa Monica Playhouse. Shout out to them. They're fantastic. And they wanted to see what I was working on because they'd seen a lot of the stuff that I'd been working on when I was younger, and felt like I had kind of started to find my voice and that this was actually something really substantial and wanted to put it on.
What did you learn when you took that playwriting course, since you'd already been writing for so long? What did you learn? Like, what clicked? Like, oh, I didn't realize that I was, I don't know, those things that you know.
Well, it wasn't actually a playwriting course. It was a special independent study. So first period, I got to go to the drama room, and I got to work on the computer on my piece, and then every day I would check in with my mentor and go over what I was doing. And it's very weird for me to say because I'm a huge advocate for education, love education. Mm-hmm. I've never officially taken a dramatic writing course. I've read every book on it. I've had extraordinary mentors. Shout out to the amazing Gabriel Barry, who's an incredible Broadway director. He's also a Tony-nominated actor. And I like to say that I went to the Gabriel Barry Graduate School of Writing and Directing. And yeah, he's phenomenal. So I honestly learned a lot from being able to do it from a very early age and getting stuff in front of an audience and seeing that, but then also having amazing mentors who treated me like I was a Broadway professional before I was, and learning almost like in the old days when you were apprentice to a master. I feel like I learned a little bit more that way when it came to writing, which was different from performing, because I hit all the major great training grounds as an actor. So it was an interesting sort of juxtaposition for those two things.
So what can you pull upon anything specific that those mentors taught you, as far as your writing goes?
Absolutely. Well, I teach all this stuff now, and I'm a real advocate for, first of all, the fact that I think everybody can become good to a degree to something if they work really hard. I also think that everybody is born with certain things that they're naturally talented at and then things that they need to work on. And the things that I was really naturally skilled at were really great concepts and really great dialogue. They just came very naturally to me. In structuring was something that I really had to work on. I would come up with these great ideas and wouldn't always have the tools to execute them. And so Gabe really sat down with me and really asked all the dramaturgical questions that, any Broadway director or the New York Times, if they saw a show, would ask, and sort of really made me hone in on the details and go through process and work through that. And through doing that with him, I learned a lot about structure. It was painful at times and difficult in terms of my wrestling with something that was challenging for me. And I got much better at that. I also really love Blake Snyder's book, Save the Cat,
sure, yeah.
Which, if anybody doesn't know, it's technically a screenwriting book. I think it applies to everything. I'm also a 2-time best-selling novelist, and I've used a lot of the techniques that he talks about in that for everything I'm writing. That was really helpful to me in breaking down structure, and now it's more holistic. I don't have to think through the details and as minute focus over as long stretch. But I'm trying to think of other specific things. Trusting your audience. I am also somebody that tends to overwrite a little bit, so paring things down and what's the most minimal you can do. But then I also got to work with Gabe actually directing my pieces and seeing him in the room with Broadway artists and asking questions and, figuring. That's the other thing I think Neil Gaiman said, which I love Neil Gaiman's work. Neil Gaiman is a very problematic subject matter right now, so I very much hesitate to bring him up. But this quote was great, that people ask him writing advice all the time, and he says, you learn to write the book you're writing. And so you learn to write the play that you're writing, and everything brings up different challenges and whatnot. But yeah, just learning what you're naturally good at, learning what you need to work on, and then making yourself work on that. And one of the big things that I don't see in a lot of writing students and coming up is focus on structure and plodding through it. And it's the most important thing, because it's like with architecture. You can have all sorts of cool ideas of how to do things, but if you don't have a really solid foundation, you can't do any of that. So I see a lot of writing students that, for lack of a better description, if we're doing the architecture analogy, will make really cool windows and they'll make really great paint choices, and then they won't be able to attach them to anything, and they have to then sort of go back to, let's talk about how you build your foundation. And it can be annoying, but you got to do it, and it will make everything else faster and just soar.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your process. So what's the first thing? Once you have your concept, what's your first step?
So it's a little bit different if it's something that I'm writing because it's being generated for me versus a commission. So if it's something that's being generated for me, I need two things to really get invested in it, because I have so many ideas, I wouldn't have time to write all of them.
Sure.
There has to be some idea or question or something that I'm wrestling with or I want to understand more, and something, I guess, thematic, for lack of a better description. I know theme is not always a great term. I really like it. But what the piece is about that you're exploring, that's also then paired with some sort of technical challenge. So, like, for example, The Opposite of Love, the show that I'm doing now, is really interesting because Trial, that you mentioned, I feel like I found my voice as a writer with Trial. And then I had some success with a couple other pieces, and I suddenly was like, oh, my niche and comfort zone as a writer is magical realism and heightened language. Awesome. Let's take both those things away. And so The Opposite of Love is pretty much in real time, two people in a living room having non-heightened language conversations. So it's the pairing of a technical challenge and a bigger question. I want to know what I'm writing, like why I'm writing this. I want to know, for lack of a better description, what the gift is I want to give to the audience. And then I like to know where I'm starting and where I'm ending. Because for me, I sort of analogize it to a road trip. if you're setting out on a road trip and you have no idea where you're going, you can have a really fun time, but there's a high chance that you might end up in a swamp somewhere with no gas. If you know where you're starting and you know where you're ending, there are 5 million ways that you can get there, but you know where your goal is and, that sort of thing. So I like to know what the first beat and the last beat are. And then I sort of like to think about it, pontificate on it. This is very vague, but sort of, spend some time thinking about the characters and thinking about maybe what the beats are, and maybe I'll have some scenes that are really, really clear and some that aren't. And I've gotten to the point as a writer now where I can write a little bit out of order and just sort of go, but I'm also very fast. Pretty much every play I've ever written has been written in 9 days or less. Wow. So once I sort of know, I also have synesthesia, which not a lot of people know what that is, but it's interesting as a creative and sort of is a part of my process. And a lot of times I sort of feel like I'm taking dictation, or I'm watching the play in front of me and just trying to write it down as frantically as I can because it's not going to go back. And then once I do that, I'll go back and read it and do some tweaks. And I sort of feel like you should do as much to make the piece as good as it can on your own and then bring people into it, because that's only then going to make it better. If they're helping to fix problems that you could have done alone in your room, then you're wasting your own time. So I do as much as I can myself, and then I'll bring really trusted, close friends and advisors in and do a table read, and then sort of go from there.
Well, how do you recognize that? How do you recognize those problems when you say, if you bring somebody in to fix things, how do you know what needs to be fixed?
Well, not necessarily to fix things, but if I've worked on a piece a lot and I really feel like I don't know what other questions to ask alone right now. It's more like just sort of getting other eyes on it.
What questions do you ask yourself when you're going through that process?
It depends on what the specific piece is. Like that idea you learn to write the piece that you're writing, it depends on the piece. And one of the biggest things, and this is where being an actor and writer really inform each other. I know there's a lot of writers that like to be separate and they like to just be on the outside, and that's really helpful. And I've done that too, and that can be great. But being an actor, a lot of times there's things that I learn about the dramaturgy of a piece being on the inside of it. So, for example, there was a musical that I was working on. I love this show, very near and dear to my heart. We'd worked on it a lot. It felt super solid. We did a table read of it, and I read one of the characters. And we finished the table read, and on paper, like, all the math added up. And we finished the table read, and I said, I just could not wait to get off stage because I was the least interesting thing in this show. Not meaning me as a person, but this character. Like, she is the least interesting thing here, and she kind of needs to be the most interesting thing. And the reason for that is I had no objective in half of these scenes. And it's a character that's very much sort of in Alice in Wonderland fashion is sort of washed along by things that are happening. I was like, I have nothing to play. And that was something that I knew from being in it and being an actor and being like, I don't have anything to play right now. But when you look at it on paper, the math was mathing. And so then I had to go back, and it was actually really helpful to think of it as an actor of, what's my objective in this scene, and how do I need to pursue something strongly even though I'm a little bit of a blank slate or whatnot. And so that's, for example, one of the things that might come up.
Is that all done in subtext, or?
You mean the first play?
No. I'm just in literally as far as writing goes. As far as those the objectives and whatnot.
Not always. I think was it Einstein that said something. I'm going to butcher this, but something along the lines of identifying the problem is 98% of the solution. Sometimes the answer is, I need to add a word to a line, and suddenly it makes sense. Sometimes it's like, I need to add like 3 more scenes to this. When I feel like the more you do it and the more you get things on their feet, it's one of the things that I find really frustrating about the way commercial development of theater works is there are some opportunities to get things up in a staged reading fashion, but there's very few opportunities to really get a show up outside of a full production that costs a lot of money, and that's when you learn how to do things. Like I said, growing up in a rep company where you're on stage constantly, you're being thrown into things, like you learn real fast, like when you have an audience's attention and when you don't, and you can make adjustments in real time. So I'm fortunate that I've been able to get shows up from a young age, and honestly, I think the doing it, the having people in the room, the feeling audience reactions, you start to get really attuned to what you need to do to tweak a moment, and that's a skill that you learn sort of by doing it, and having good mentors that can guide you in the right direction.
Is that something that can be taught in a book, is getting an audience's attention?
I don't think it can be taught in a book. I do think that it can be taught by the right teacher a little bit, but it's the audience that teaches you that. It's one of the things that frustrates me about a lot of acting programs where they won't let you even audition for like a school show for the first year or 2 years, which I get. They want to break you of habits and things. I've really learned how to be an actor by being in front of an audience. And I think the more you can get in front of an audience and, explore and experiment and have something come to life, it's like being an apprentice to a great craftsman. That's how you learn how to do stuff.
And you think that applies to writing as well as performing, just to be in front of an audience, getting your work out there?
Absolutely, because who was it that said, I really sound like Hermione Granger with all my quotes, but that the medium is the message, something like that. It's a little esoteric for me, but you're writing something as a play because it is in this form, it's going to be most effective in front of a live audience.
Right.
Otherwise, and you can write things in multiple mediums. I have a television pilot that also exists as a novel, but they're written in different ways for different purposes. And it's funny, I got in a big argument with one of my Shakespeare teachers once about The Winter's Tale, where they were getting very analytical from looking at Shakespeare from a literary standpoint, about they felt that the ending of the play was ridiculous, with Hermione, the statue, sort of coming to life, and what a stupid choice Shakespeare made. I happen to have the experience that my first exposure to The Winter's Tale was seeing it live at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and I hadn't read it before. I didn't know the story, and what was genius about it, I thought, was that Shakespeare was using the fact that we were living in a theatrical convention in order to tell the story he wanted to tell. When Hermione came out, we all knew it was the actress. Like, of course it's the actress. Nobody went and made an actual marble replica of the actress. It's the actress. But we know we're at a play, and we don't know if it's the actress because she needs to be the prop, because that's what the story is, or if there's something else that's going to happen. And I remember sitting there and all this is happening and being like, walk off the plinth, walk off the plinth, walk off the plinth. And then she did, and it was magical. And it only worked because we were in a theater and we knew the convention. When you're reading it on the page, it doesn't make sense in the same way. And so that's why I think it's important when you're working in a medium to work in that medium. And when you're doing theater, an audience is a very important part of that.
Sure, yeah. You use the term heightened language. What's heightened language?
I don't have the best definition. If you look it up in a dictionary, they'll probably have a better definition. But in general, I would say that doesn't necessarily go all the way to poetry, but it is more poetic while still being organic than we would maybe normally speak day to day as contemporary human beings. I mean, Shakespeare goes all the way into poetry. I mean, literally his dialogue is sonnets in some places. But I would say something like Sarah Ruhl's Eurydice would fall into the category of heightened language. And I love words. I love linguistics. And I love using language to the highest potential that you can. I mean, not saying that I personally can use language to the highest potential it can be. But as much as, an average person can, doing that, because we don't do that in our day-to-day speaking life. And I think it's really cool. I think language is magical. I mean, I think there's a reason why, in fairy tales, magic spells are spoken. They're not, say, like an interpretive dance. And I like being able to use language like magic. So I enjoy doing that.
Does that mean just keeping a thesaurus right next to you as you're writing?
Sometimes. I like looking things up in a thesaurus, but in the sense usually that it's I know it's on the tip of my tongue. I know the thing, as opposed to like, I've said beautiful before. Let's find a different way to do it. It's because what makes something poetic is the specificity of what the actual etymology of the word means. And not saying that like any audience member would know it, but we can feel it when it's said and when the actor knows what they're saying. Horrifying and scary. They're different. And colloquially, if I was having a conversation, they can kind of function in the same way. But if you're really being specific, they conjure different things. So
do you use a lot of alliterations and things like that as well? Or?
I do love using alliterations, and it's actually something that I've suggested to actors in my pieces to help them learn lines. Is just a little cheap trick. Is sort of when in doubt, if you have synonyms that you're debating between, use the one that starts with the same letter as the word that came before it. So sometimes when I've had actors be like, "Oh shoot, I keep messing up that line," it's like it's the S's. It's like S all in a row because it sounds great. It sounds fun, and so yeah. Some, not always, obviously, but sometimes that can be a really fun thing to do.
I have safety dance in my head now. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
For the SSSS.
Oh no! LLL. Let's do that one.
There we
instead.
go. I'll take it. You said you met. So I'm really intrigued by this, and I want to unpack it. As you said, it depends on the gift that I want to give the audience. What does that mean?
That's an idea that actually my mom first introduced me to, and I don't really hear a lot of people talking about it, and I think it's really cool and really important. I think any artist is strongly partially an artist because of what we're getting out of it. If we hated it, we wouldn't be doing it. It's edifying, we're learning things from it, it's joyful, it's magical. But if the purpose of us creating art is for us, there's no point to it. The purpose of it is to give a gift to someone else. And I like really thinking about what is the journey the audience is going to go on, that the audience is a character in this piece just as much as we are. There's a couple pieces of mine that end kind of on a question, and that the audience then is left having to fill it in themselves, which I think can then be interesting to sort of learn something about yourself with that. But I like to think of it as, what thing do I want to give the audience to take away from this? It's almost difficult to describe, and I don't necessarily mean like the theme I want them to go home and ponder, although that can be an element of something. But is this something where, like noises off? Is this just like joyful? Like I just want to give I'm not saying, obviously I didn't write noises off, but like to give the audience the gift of joy and fun, and that's wonderful. If it's the gift of being taken to a deeper place that they might not feel comfortable going to themselves. I mean, I'm talking in generic terms because the specific project's going to be more specific. My co-star actually for when we did The Opposite of Love Off-Broadway, Danny Gardner, who's also a very dear friend of mine, he shared something that one of his acting teachers said, which was, and this is from an acting perspective, and I think it applies to writing too, go to the places the audience won't, go there because they can't. And I think that that's part of...
Say that again?
Go to the places the audience won't, go there because they can't. And I mean, when you're talking about being an actor, really that's the reason why we train. And we do all the ridiculous acting exercises and things, because we have to know ourselves and know humanity and go to crazy places that audience members might not be able to go to or wrestle with or think about. And we're sort of... there's almost a surrogacy in it and a holding somebody's hand. And I think that it's true with storytelling and when you're creating a story, of being a safe person to sort of, hold someone and be like, I'm going to take you on this journey. And don't worry, it's safe. I got you. We're going to, maybe go to some scary places, but I'm a responsible storyteller. And when we leave this, you are going to feel a catharsis or have some joy or... question. Again, I'm talking in very generic terms, sure. But something like that, so that every time you're doing something, it's, I'm getting something lovely out of this, but I'm doing this for these people as a gift, and that's why we do what we do.
Do you set out with that when you first start writing, when you sit down to start, or is that something you just kind of discover as you're writing?
Well, I think it holistically needs to be something you discover a little bit, because again, the everything has a positive and negative extreme, and the negative extreme of it is, here is my moral that I'm going to impart to the audience, and when you leave, you are going to, know, and that nobody wants that. That's not great. So when I say that one of the things that causes me to start to write something is something that I need to wrestle with, or a question I have, usually in there's something that becomes a gift to me through the discovery of it, or the character speaking to me, or going on this road trip and discovering what happens. And that usually has something to do with, okay, this is what the gift of this piece is. And it usually has something tied into that.
What is the gift? Well, in this example, since you've got it, opposite of love is opening up. What's your gift that you're departing to the audience in this?
Well, I don't want to get too specific, because I think part of it is I don't want to tell anybody like how to leave feeling from anything I've written. But I think that the opposite of love is exploring the state and nature of intimacy in our current culture in a way that no one is talking about. And so there's a lot of things in the show that I would hear friends sort of, whisper in random corners when they were feeling like they could be vulnerable, and like, I've never told anybody this. But then I kept hearing those kinds of like over and over and over again. And obviously me and everybody in the show and everybody in the world has their own experiences with intimacy of all forms, and so many things that we have in common that we're not talking about, and things that have been challenges in all times, and things that have become special challenges now. And hopefully one of the gifts can be, we are going to take all those things that are sort of kept in the dark and everybody thinks is a big secret, and in a very loving way, we're going to shine light on them, and we're going to have a conversation about them. And I think that, the play's been described as if Pretty Woman was a Black Mirror episode sans tech. And I think that it is something that can be almost a warning. Like, I think part of the gift of the show is we can go and make different choices and do something differently. We can not let this be our story. And I think that it's happening in a communal way that I don't see happening with a lot of these issues. And when we did it Off-Broadway, that's definitely what it was doing. It also created this really great cross-generational conversation. The very first reading that we did of it, which was actually our producer, Neil Gooding, he's amazing. He just won a Tony. I'm so proud of him. He's phenomenal. He came to that reading, and it's the reason he wanted to do the show, was after we did it, pretty much every woman in the audience that was like over 50 got kind of mad at the show, and were like, this is pessimistic, this girl just needs to wait for the right person, why? And I didn't say a word. Every woman in the audience under that age turned around and said, this is the most accurate representation of dating culture we've ever seen. And it became this thing of like, well, why? We didn't know that. And like, oh, well, and it was like no one was talking about these things. And that was sort of the moment that was like, oh, there's something here that kind of really needs to be shared. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question about some of the gifts that hopefully the show can offer. Sure.
I want to go back to, you said that you have to determine your first and last beats before you start. Let's unravel that. What is that?
Well, like I said, we started with the road trip analogy. I need to know where I'm starting and where I'm ending, and then I can sort of play and figure out how we get there. But it usually has to do also with the theme and the point of the story. So, like with Opposite, I knew the setup, and the setup it's not a secret. The setup of the show is, it's about a young woman named Eloise, who is a trust fund baby. She comes from a very wealthy background, but she's experienced abuse from a very early age, with the one line not being crossed, actual intercourse. And she's very desirous of a loving romantic relationship, and that's not what she's found in the dating scene. And so in her words, she feels she needs to sort of, quote, get over herself and join the real world. She sort of feels like dating is an audition, and having sex is kind of part of that. And, you know, if you want any hope of finding love, you better, you know, stick to the script and do what you're supposed to do, even though that's not how she wants to go down that path. So she hires a down-on-his-luck hustler named Will to take her virginity. It does not go well. And he, though, quickly realizes she's a cash cow and is like, well, I just come back every week and we can just talk. And I knew that the first beat of this was, you know, Eloise hires Guy to take her virginity, but she really wants love. And we just throw those two worlds into each other. And I knew what the last beat of the show was, which I don't want to share because it's
fair enough.
It's a twist. It's not the kind of twist that, like, if you know it will spoil it. It's the kind of twist that once you know it, you'll want to go back and see it again. But just for anybody who doesn't want to know. But I will say it has to do with the fact that when intimacy has become a commodity, does that then make everything else to do with intimacy impossible? And I knew that those were the bookends, because that's what I wanted to explore. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm wrestling with these issues. And then the middle of the play is me wrestling with them in conversation with these characters.
Okay. Do you always act in your work?
I don't always do it. I do it when it's appropriate and I think beneficial for the show. I do really love doing it. And so when there's an opportunity to do it, I like doing it. And I think that if you do that for the wrong reasons, it can go really badly. But if you do it for the right reasons, it can go great. I mean, we all love Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton. Right. And in ancient Greek theater, you know, all the playwrights were in their own plays and whatnot too. I like directing my own work on occasion. But yeah, I don't know. I sort of, there's another quote that C.S. Lewis didn't say it. I think it's from the play Shadowlands about C.S. Lewis and Joy Davidman's relationship. And Joy says, I don't know if you prefer, if it's like you can't decide if you want to be the child caught up in the magic spell or the magician casting it. And I think that if you have the magical opportunity to do both, it can be really fun.
How when you're performing your own work, do you realize, oh wait, no, that doesn't work. I'm gonna tweak this. I'm gonna change it. Do you find yourself doing rewrites? I
do, but I am really good at separating different roles. And it actually, in pretty much all the things I've done, we joke about there's writer Ashley and actor Ashley, and it is very clear who you're talking to at any given time. And I often have to be in conversation with myself about that, especially early in the process. Like if something's not working, let's say it has something to do with my character, I have to really have a conversation about, is this a writing problem? Like, do I need to fix this line? Or has actor Ashley not figured out how to execute it yet? And actually with Opposite, when we did it Off-Broadway, there was a little moment that I just, as an actor, wasn't quite finding, because being in it and embodying it in your whole body it's just a different experience of it than when you're writing it. And so I wasn't quite finding it. I'm like, I think when I go home tonight, I need to have a conversation with writer Ashley. And so I went home and I'm like, hey, writer Ashley, can you look over this part of the script? Because I think that there's something maybe not working. And writer Ashley came out, and writer Ashley did all the dramaturgy on it and looked at it from all angles and said, nope, this is really solid. Actor Ashley, you better figure it out. And she was right. Actor Ashley hadn't figured it out yet, and I had to find the internal beats and how to interpret it through the instrument of myself and my being. And then there's other times, it's actually really funny because I feel like in a lot of training, we are taught to hold up any work that has ever been produced as if it was just delivered on high in a beam of golden light and is perfection, and if there's any problem, it's a problem with you. And in certain things, when you're dealing with Shakespeare or something, yeah, I think it's pretty solid, we got that down. But what I've found is there's been this mentality of everything being treated that way down to the first reading of a play. And it's been it actually taught me a lot about writing and acting, being in situations where maybe we'd be in development for a piece and a line would not be working for an actor, and they'd be and they'd be like, no, I'm going to get it. I'm going to fix. And it's like, oh no, I wrote that terribly. Let me fix that for you. It's like, no, you don't have to do anything. I'm going to find it. It's my problem. It's like, no, it's actually not your problem. I wrote that badly for you. Like, let me help you. And I don't know, it taught me a lot about just the process of creation and development, and that works of art are living organisms that are going to keep changing. I also like to tweak and change things when different casts come in. I like to think of writing as like haute couture, that everybody's bringing their own essence to things. Not like a lot of things are going to change, but I might change a word here and there because the essence of a person is different. So yeah, so I make it very clear when I'm in rehearsal with a director that I'm like, I'm the actor unless you invite writer Ashley into the room. And then writer Ashley is very happy to be there. Sometimes on a break, I might be like, hey, writer Ashley here. I feel like this isn't working. I need to tweak this or whatnot. It also depends on what part of the development process you're in. You know, if you're doing a reading and it's like the first time it's being done in public, writer Ashley's probably going to be there more than, you know, at this point with Opposite, we've done a lot of development and we've had a whole production of it already. And I'm still tweaking things, but yeah, I'm good at separating things in the room. So it's not like, hey, the writer is looking at you while you're in a scene together and thinking about things. So yeah.
Well, my question is when it comes into that, when it becomes a directing aspect, and you're working with a director, and maybe do you let go? Do you separate that as well, to where it's just like, that's not my vision. I wrote this. This is not. You're going somewhere that's not.
That's a really great question, and it's a very tricky one. Partly because there's no good answer to it. One of my rules that I try to stick to as much as possible, and it helps, it's not a guarantee, is I won't, in general, if I can help it, I won't allow somebody to direct a production of my piece unless they've at least directed a reading beforehand to see how we work together and how they work. I'm really not the biggest fan of directors who, you know, want to come in and cross out all the stage directions and be like, okay, you know, all you rabble, I'm the one who knows how to interpret something, and, you know, let's do this. You know, I'm a smart writer. There's reasons I wrote the things that I did. Not to say that you have to be beholden to it or things can't change, but yeah, it can be tricky. And so I would say when you're working with a director that you really trust, that has respect for your work, that you have a good rapport. And I mean, and respect for your work, again, does not mean like not changing anything. It just means they take the time to I mean, I've full on seen directors come into a rehearsal and end rehearsal early and be like, oh, well, we still have like 2 hours. Can we move on? Oh, I haven't read scene 2 yet. You know, like in major like situations. So if they have respect for your work, if you work well together, it's phenomenal to just let go. And that's what I want. I want to just be the actor in the room. That doesn't always happen. And when you feel like you kind of need to do triage on a situation, then you kind of have to feel that out. And it's tricky because sometimes it can turn into a situation of, do I want everyone to like me and be happy with me, or do I want to have a good show?
Right.
And I'm not that I would ever, you know, be mean to anybody or whatnot, but if it's a matter of saying something and having a good show, or just not saying anything and knowing that some reviewer's like going to comment on it, I'll bring it up, and that can be tricky sometimes. But it depends on the director and the situation. Sure.
I just going back, and I've told this story a few times in different episodes, so forgive me if you've heard it. But Daniel Guyton, he was one of the first playwrights that we had on early episodes, and he told the story about a director that went in, and so, but he didn't know. He's like, he had gone and watched the show, and after he's like, what happened? The stabbing. What happened to the stabbing? He's like, we crossed out all the stage directions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a major event that you took out. So you have
to be working with people who who understand why things are there. And what I love to have a lot of meetings with directors so that they know everything I know. That I'm never worried about being in the room and being like, oh shoot, I need to speak up because I need to share. It's like they know everything I know. If they need to share it, great. But yeah, there's a difference between like maybe you want to interpret a line a little differently and you just like didn't include that prop even though it's like the denouement of the show because like you ran out of time and forgot about it. Like it's also a different story when like you've had a premiere production of your show and like it's being licensed that you let go a bit and be like, great, there's gonna be lots of interpretations. I will feel differently about it, but like great, my work is just out there and living. But when it's the premiere production, because that's setting the tone for what this piece is,
right,
that starts to feel a little more urgent.
Well, it's almost, I almost feel like he didn't even bother reading the play. Like he just went through and crossed everything out first and then read it. You know, it's like, that seems like a very important event.
Well, there's a lot of teachers that teach actors and directors to do that. And I think that it comes from wanting the idea of like, you need to find this for yourself. And I get it to a degree, but there's also a way to read stage directions in order to understand what the author's intention was, and then you can make an intelligent decision about how do you interpret that yourself.
Sure, but I'll go to this as well, which I didn't know. I learned this from doing this podcast, is that I didn't realize that everything before the 80s was all notes from whatever the stage manager was who went in and wrote out the blocking, you know, or the stage directions based on that. So it's like, I can see that for other things, but nowadays I'm like, you know, we're not in that realm anymore. I think those stage directions have a purpose, you know. So I think that, you know, opposed to like, oh well, we're doing the glass menagerie and this or this, you know. So I can kind of get that maybe for those older plays, and maybe that's the purpose that they did that, but I don't know. Maybe it's an egotistical thing when it comes to. I
think sometimes, and I think there's a lot of directors that want to. I always like to think of Darren Nichols from Slings and Arrows. If you haven't seen that, I have not finished watching it. I think I've 3 or 4 episodes in, and it's a lot of fun. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's a sort of parody of the Stratford Shakespeare Festival. But early on, this new director Darren Nichols, who's been doing experimental directing in Germany, comes in to direct Hamlet, and it's sort of the epitome of like everything about a bad director. I mean, he literally like starts the rehearsal with, "This is a dead text. Let's, you know," we're going to take something rotten in the state of Denmark very seriously. I want a foul-looking, foully acted, and foul-smelling production of Hamlet. It's just like, we've all met like that person. So I don't know. There's something about, I want to be I think there are a lot of people that want to be auteurs, but they're not creators, they're interpreters. And when an interpreter wants to be a principal creator, I think some things can kind of go wrong. And interpreters are creators too, but I mean in the like, no, you really want to be creating something from the ground up, but you are taking somebody else's material and then sort of, I mean, this is not like throwing anybody under the bus, and it's not the best example, but it just came to mind, like the live action Alice in Wonderland. It's not Alice in Wonderland, which is fine, but it felt like what the team wanted to do was an original fantasy story, which like then let them do an original fantasy story. But yeah, I think when it's about egoism and, you know, wanting to control and take some, not really taking into account fellow collaborators, I think things go really horribly wrong.
How has acting helped your writing?
I mean, so much. Like I said, they feed each other. I know things as an actor being inside of it that I don't know as a writer. I mean, a lot of writers get a lot out of being on, like they're like, I need to be on the outside. I need to see it. I need to be on the outside. I almost need to be on the inside because it's like adding senses. I don't know. To me, sometimes solely sitting on the outside almost feels like you're sitting down to dinner, but you've had your sense of smell removed. And it feels like when I'm inside of it, I get senses back that are giving me additional information. but it also feels like almost a separate thing, I start to feel definitely at some point like just an actor doing any piece. It's more like I've just done all of the homework that an actor should. Like, I know where all the beats are. I know I've done all the text analysis. It's more like I just sort of get a running start. So a lot of, like I said, I kind of can separate it well. But in terms of what it's taught, again, it's taught me everything from the importance of action, beats, and objectives and obstacles to characters, like making sure that every character has all of those things at any given moment. And little things like, I think we've all, anybody who's like been in a show has been in some show at some point where you're like, I mean, honestly, if this role was cut, nothing would change. This is fine. And so when I'm doing a play, if there's ever a character that I'm like, I wouldn't want to play that character, something's gone wrong. Not to say that like I'm right for every character, but if I like actively would not be excited if I was cast as that character, why would I expect another actor to be? And so it's little tiny things like that help make things active, help develop character, give you additional sensory information, I think, into writing.
How do you make your characters sound different?
Some of it, and this is not helpful to anybody, is
not necessarily.
A lot of times the characters just start talking, and I feel like I'm taking dictation, and they sound how they sound. On the so this is the other thing. I think that with all artists, there is a combination of like the muse speaks and the technical requirements. It's great when the muse speaks, but at the end of the day, if you're like in Tech Week and you're about to like open on Broadway and there's a scene that's not working and you have a 15-minute break and the director's like, we need a new scene here, you need to be able to turn out a new scene. You can't be like, well, wait a minute, I need to wait a few days and see if the muse strikes. It's like being a carpenter. If someone orders a chair, you have to make the chair. Right. So I think that it's a combination of both those things. So on the one hand, a lot of times the characters just start talking and they sound how they sound, and sometimes it's not how you expect. The technical mastery side of that is, what age is this character? What time period are we in? What's the socioeconomic status of the character? Where did they grow up? Where have they lived? What is their goal in this scene? I mean, with Will and Eloise, who are the two characters in The Opposite of Love, Eloise comes from money. She comes from the elite, Connecticut world. Will is from a very, very poor family in Detroit, Michigan. He's a high school dropout. Eloise went to undergrad at Yale and is going to grad school at Columbia. Just by those basic facts, Eloise uses words like erudite, and Will does not know how to pronounce Monet. And those are just basic things that are obvious to the characters that then show up in how they speak. So that's sort of the technical side of it, and then the other is just them talking to you. So,
what do you do before you even sit down to write? What before you start writing the initial?
Yeah.
Like, what prep do you do? Do you have the 36 questions that you for each character that you?
I find that in me just sort of almost daydreaming about it at this point, because when I was starting out, I really was like, I am doing my beat sheet, I am doing all that stuff, and now from having done it so much, it feels more intrinsic. I don't feel like I need to sit down and like write it all down on a piece of paper. I feel like I got it, and if there's something that's missing, I'm good at knowing, I haven't done my homework on that part yet. But like I said, I'm a very fast writer, and things kind of come at me very quickly. So honestly, I need, like I said, I need to know, what's this about? Where are we starting? Where are we ending? Why do I want to write this? And then I sit down and just start going. And sometimes that's, the muse is speaking and I feel like I'm taking dictation and this is happening, and wherever I am, I'm like, I gotta stop and I gotta go like right now. And sometimes it's like, I gotta finish this play. So, all right, so I know this scene needs to be here. These are the objectives of the characters. And then it's almost like, and again, I guess this is another way that acting helps, is it's like doing improv. I mean, when you're doing improv, it's like, great, so this is your relationship. This is who you are to each other. This is where you are. These are your objectives. Go. And it's like doing that, but you're playing all the characters. Right. And the thing that's interesting is again, Neil Gaiman said this. I'm sorry to keep bringing him up. Later, usually you can't tell what stuff you wrote when the muse was striking and which was technical. And sometimes the technical stuff is better. But I just let it go free form and just do it and hash it out. And again, maybe this is the actor. Like I sort of know what, the pursuing of the objectives feels like. And then you go back and read it. And I will, switch roles that sometimes I'll go back and read a script. I'll pick a specific character to read it from their perspective to answer some questions for myself. I'm sorry, I just leaned away from the mic while I was answering that. That was bad actor form right there. That was me not doing my job as an actor. I'm sorry. And yeah, so I am a huge advocate of all that prep work. And when I'm working with students, I make them do all that prep work until you get to a point where it's kind of holistic and you know it. And if there's something you don't, you know that you need to figure it out. So
you said you were good at dialogue. Mm-hmm. What makes great dialogue? I know you're not in the throes of writing right now, so
I'm always in the throes of writing. What makes great dialogue? It's honest and organic.
How do you write organic dialogue?
By paying attention to how people talk in real life and how you talk. I mean, it really starts to seep into your brain. I mean, it starts to get to the point where you start to become very aware of, why am I saying what I'm saying in this conversation right now? You start almost analyzing yourself like a character. And it's actually great. I mean, it's why a lot of artists, will major or minor in psychology in college. There's a lot of overlap. But it becomes very interesting to listen to how normal people speak, and not just for cadences. Cadences are a large part of it. I also actually advocate for dialogue, treating it almost like you're writing sheet music, where punctuation is like sheet music and thinking about all that and whatnot. But it's more, why are people saying what they're saying when they're saying it in the way that they're saying it? And really thinking about it, because everything that somebody is saying is for a reason, whether they realize it or not. And it is coming from who they are specifically as a human being. I like heightened language. I tend to speak with a little more heightened language in my normal life than the average person would. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of when I'm in like a social situation and I'm saying something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am my objective as a human being right now is to like not look awkward. You just start to become aware of it, and then it starts to blend with, you start to understand human beings, and then your characters become human beings, and it sort of just all flows into each other. And I think also just having empathy for people and for your characters and for people in real life, and approaching them with love, because you can't give a gift to the audience unless you're treating everything in the situation with love, even kind of unlovable characters. So if any of that makes sense, I think that helps.
You mentioned punctuation as if sheet music. How do you play with punctuation? What are you using?
So what
in those instances?
Yeah, what I use is a comma is a breath, like literally like a musical punctuation mark. A period is an end. It's an end of a thought. An ellipses is a trailing off of an idea, like maybe you're talking and you can't quite think of the right word, or you realize you don't really want to finish what you were saying. A dash is the next person cuts you off. A slash is overlapping dialogue. And I think what Paula Vogel talks about plasticity of the page could be really fun when it's appropriate, of how the dialogue actually looks on the page. But I talk to and a lot of this stuff, it's not the same for every writer, but a lot of what I just said is pretty consistent between writers. And a lot of times I'll say, if you try just going through, don't try to act anything, and just read it as if you are a musician playing sheet music, and just take a breath where there's a comma and all the rest of it. And if you do it right, it kind of does a lot of work for you. One exercise that I love to give students is to find a scene in a lesser known film, or listen to two real people talking, or actually a film or a TV show is helpful for a specific part of this, and try to write it out on the page so that if anybody is reading it out loud and absolutely obeying the punctuation marks, it will sound with the exact same cadence that the people said it in the episode. And it can just be a helpful thing. And not saying that everybody needs to adhere to it, every actor needs to do that, or you can't switch it up, but it can be helpful in the same way that, again, musical markings, if you write something in fortissimo, and a conductor might decide to switch it up for various reasons, but if you play it in fortissimo, it will do helpful, important things with the piece, to try.
When you write with ellipses and you trail off, do you know what the rest of that thought or sentence was going to be?
Absolutely. I think I'm kind of known a little bit, and a lot of it's my Hermione Granger-ness, and I'm sure it can be annoying, and it's something that I sort of got from Gabe, at least the idea of it is, any question that there is about something, someone will ask you at some point. So try to have an answer. And sometimes it's like, I'm not sure, I need to think about that some more. But in general, if somebody's like, why is that comma there? Or why is that word there? There's a reason that you did it. And I see a lot of young writers be like, oh, I don't know. I don't know why it's in there. It's like, well, if you don't know, how do you expect anybody else to know?
Right.
So, and it doesn't mean you have to be right, but it means you can at least come to the conversation and be like, well, my intention here was this. Is that not being communicated? And then again, it's 95% about, identifying the problem is, if somebody's like, oh no, that's not being communicated. Great. That is something very practical that I can do. If this was meant to come across as said blustery and, well, as in Twelfth Night, she did speak in starts distractedly, and it's not reading as that, great, then I did something not helpful, and I can go and do it more helpful, and it's a practical thing that you can do instead of going home and being like, I don't know why it's not working, and what I should do, and whatnot. So
you mentioned theme. Do you know what the theme is when you start, or is that something you just kind of discover as you go, or is it something you decide on right after?
I think I kind of, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, I kind of think you have to at least know what the general idea of around your theme is. If, like, randomly came to mind first, I'm a huge fan of Agatha All Along, the TV show. Love it. And WandaVision, and there's many themes that both of them are exploring, but WandaVision is a treatise on grief. That's what it is. The whole series is leading up to the line, I don't think this is a spoiler, is leading up to the line, what is grief if not love persevering? And making that as much of a gut punch as humanly possible. Agatha and again, it's about a lot of other things too, but Agatha All Along, I think, is about generational trauma and trying relationships between parents and children. And everything is exploring that. And if you know that, then it can be super fun. Opposite is a really great example of that, especially because it's a two-hander. You are dealing with conversations about intimacy. In this corner, we have a very sheltered, privileged girl who is a virgin and who wants to only have intimacy and sex and all of that within a committed, loving relationship. In this corner, you have a guy who's a professional prostitute who thinks that sex is super fun, has never had emotional intimacy, and has never really deeply examined a lot of things about his life, and just thinks that, sex is great and fun in any circumstance, and like, what's the freaking big deal? Those are two people with diametrically opposed opinions of the central theme. And to play is we're going to lock them in a room together and have them hash it out. My play Trial is very much about justice versus mercy and the complex nature of forgiveness. Every character in that play has a very different opinion and a changing opinion on those ideas. You lock them in a room together, let them hash it out. It's one of the easiest, and again, not in a moralizing way, in a human way. It's one of the easiest ways to help develop character is figure out what do you want to talk about, and make sure that every character you have has a different point of view about it. And it instantly leads to drama and fun things. And it's again, it's like improv. It's like, what are the basic things that you need to have, and then go have fun in the playground.
You said the two things that you're good at.
Well, the two things I was naturally good at. Yeah.
One was dialogue.
Yeah.
And you said magical.
Oh, okay. So the two things that I was naturally good at in terms of writing were magical realism and really great concepts. My niche as a writer is magical realism and heightened language.
Yeah. What is magical realism?
Funny you should ask. It's not discussed very much. Magical realism, again, the dictionary would probably have a better definition than me, but it basically means magic, and I don't necessarily mean like a literal magic system, right, but that is intermingling with our real world. So one of the best examples that I have, and it's my favorite film, is Pan's Labyrinth. That is magic, for lack of a better word, coexisting within a very real framework. There's a wonderful, I think it's a Mexican film called Tigers Are Not Afraid. That's one of the best examples of magical realism I've ever seen. So something like The Chronicles of Narnia would not be magical realism. That would be fantasy. Right. Something where there is some sort of overlap, and again, doesn't mean that there needs to be like there's another world beneath our own, but just that there are elements of unreality intermingling with our real world. If you take that to an extreme, you get surrealism, which surrealism, it's funny, I have written plays that are surrealistic. I think it's one of the most difficult things that you can do. I have a YouTube channel, I have a whole video on why surrealism is very difficult. But surrealism is literal dream logic. So like Alice in Wonderland is surrealist, and it's one of the reasons it's so difficult to adapt into a non-book medium. But that's how I sort of define magical realism for me.
How do you apply that to your own work in playwriting?
I tend to gravitate towards stories that have some sort of heightened, magical, otherworldly something going on. So like Trial takes place in an afterlife that's represented as a corporate office building. That's kind of magical realism right there. We're dealing with the afterlife and, corporate bureaucracy. Have fun. I have...
Is that stated right there? I mean, does your audience know that? Or
yes.
Is it... Okay.
Yeah. I mean, right in the first description of the scene, it's like we know we're in the afterlife, and it's described as like if the waiting room of Devil Wears Prada met the DMV. And it's all like horrible white, like badly faded white, and a row of chairs and a number counter that you just keep hearing this disembodied voice of like who's being served, and then every so often like somebody will get to go through a door, and then it's very quickly talked about that the main character in it has died. So yeah, it's clear right off the bat. I have a play that I love called Snow that is an exploration of the importance and nature of storytelling, sort of structured like Cloud Atlas or The Hours, so 3 disparate storylines all revolve around Snow White, and that is not only talking about a fairy tale, but one of the one character that stays the same through all stories is the ancient god of death. So we have characters having great conversations with the god of death and various things like that. So I don't know. I think that there's something mythic about theater, and I think there's something inherently magical about it. I mean, the way that Western theater as we know it got started was, in ancient Greek theater, it went from we're going to talk in epic poetry about the gods, and then one day somebody stepped forward and said, I am Zeus, and I say it, and it's doing this magical thing of making the intangible tangible and the unreal real and the unseen seen. So it's inherently heightened just by the nature of what it is, and I like the idea of taking advantage of that, which was fun then with Opposite and other things I've written of we're going to just make it very, kind of kitchen sink drama. And I think there's great value in that too. But I think that more and more writers have been really influenced by this sort of sitcom kind of writing, and that's infiltrated the theater too. And there's a lot of we're going to like sit in a bar and talk. And that's great. And they're great plays that have been written like that. But when that's a lot of what's being written by young writers, there's a whole like universe of theatrical vocabulary that we can take advantage of. You know, Peter and the Starcatcher did great things with that. You know, with snow, you can do it in a lot of different ways, but we had a trunk that all the props and costumes came out of, and it was that kind of thing. And it's things you can only do with plays. And then if you adapted it into a film, you do it in a different way. But I think it's cool if we have a kind of mythic medium, let's take advantage of telling some mythic stories.
What are you working on right now?
Oh my goodness, so many things. Trial has a wonderful lead producer, and we're working toward a big commercial production of that in New York. And Trial's like my heart and soul. Opposites obviously going up. I have like 3 plays that I just wrote. I'm constantly writing. A lot of people ask me, you know, how do you stay motivated about doing it? And yeah, there are times when you're like, I got to sit down and I got to hash out this scene. But I'm not the best person to ask that, because I don't know. For me, writing is like having dessert. And especially because I'm very aware of the privilege that you can do it anywhere. To be an actor, you kind of have to have a lot of things in play to do it. But so, I don't know, with writing, I kind of think of, you have to get all the other things done today, and then you get to write. So, but yeah, so I have lots of new plays in the works. I have film pilots and other things. So I'll always have something that I just finished like another play like a week ago. So
it's a good problem to have.
Too many things. I've come to the realization that it is, just by the nature of how long it takes things to get produced, it is likely that I will die with a significant amount of my writing having not been produced, and I'm not super happy about that, but we'll see.
You'll always have something. Where can people find your work?
Well, the easiest thing to do would be to go to my website, which is ashleygriffinofficial.com. It's ASHLEYGRIFFIN. I always get Griffin like Gryffindor. I'm on Instagram at Ashley Griffin Official. I have a YouTube channel that's Ashley Griffin. So those are the best ways to follow me and sort of see what's going on. But I would love for everybody to come out to the Hudson Theater and see The Opposite of Love, because it's such a treat for me, because I was born and raised in LA, and I haven't been on stage or have a work of mine produced on stage in LA since I graduated high school. So this is a really special homecoming for me. I get to sort of bring everything that I've been doing, you know, I know it's LA, but it's also my hometown, and, you know, bring it back. So I would love to get to show everybody the special piece that, you know, before it's like, only if you were in New York could you come see it, and now it's out here. So yeah, and then I have 2 novels, Blank Page, Paige, and The Spindle, that are available wherever books are sold. And I'm actually having a book signing at the Santa Monica Barnes & Noble on September 7th.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
So you can instantly read my work that way. But yeah, stay in touch, come find my stuff, and come see The Opposite of Love. It's going to be really great and really fun.
We'll have the ticket link in the show notes as well. And you kind of already touched on it, but I'll ask it anyways, because it's usually the final question. Are you on the socials?
Yeah, well, and if you also go to my website, there's links to all my socials, but I'm on TikTok too, but usually Instagram is probably the best way to find me, and then my YouTube channel, where I have like an hour and a half long deep dive video into Snow White. So if you're a Hermione Granger like me, come deep dive with me.
I love it. Ashley Griffin, thank you for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with your friends. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.